Shalom Aleichem. Welcome, everybody. I wanted to talk for a few minutes about the Hobby Lobby case. It's pretty shocking to me how far away some members of the Supreme Court and the Obama administration in general have strayed away from Jefferson's original vision of religious freedom that was made part of our Constitution in the United States with the First Amendment. It's well known that Jefferson disagreed with people of different religions, yet he always said that he would fight to the death to ensure that they have the freedom to practice their religion. Before the Revolutionary War, there was a case, what's now the United States were colonies of Great Britain. And in England in those days, like in Israel today, unfortunately, with the Zionim, in Eretz Yisrael, they don't have real freedom of religion. They have official tolerance of different religions, and you have to get a license. Like in Israel, there's a chief rabbi and there's a chutzpah. But these little chief rabbis who are just government appointees go around and they boss around rabbanim who are much bigger than them when it comes to gerus and gittin and chasnas and things like that. And a friend of mine, he's a ger, and he was megayer with the Eidach Haredis, and the Rabbanut had to send some shliach to make sure the Eidach Haredis did it right. This is not how it's supposed to be in America. In America, there's freedom of religion. Ad Kedei Kach, the Supreme Court ruled in the 70s that even the Universal Life Church could give ordained ministers, back then it wasn't online, it was in magazines, because in the United States there's freedom of religion. And the government has nothing to do and cannot mandate religion and cannot force people to violate the religion. And I hear, strangely enough, a lot of Jewish people and unfortunately Jewish members of the Supreme Court, one of which recently went to speak in the oldest standing synagogue, the Touro Synagogue, Elena Kagan. She went to speak there at the Touro Synagogue, the oldest standing synagogue in the United States. It's not the oldest congregation, but it's the oldest building, the synagogue. There's a tremendous chutzpah and ignorance of what religious freedom means. This is a woman who has said that she wanted to trade our constitution for foreign constitutions of other countries. So this is someone who has no respect for the laws of our country and for the constitution that she took an oath to defend. And a lot of these judges, they legislate from the bench. They don't follow with the laws. Their job is to interpret and not to legislate. Anyway, I think, as a Jewish person, this is a clear issue. Not because necessarily we agree with, from a religious standpoint or a theological standpoint and so forth. There are different views in different branches of Christianity, and there are different views within Judaism, and there are different views among Jews who are not religious or who are not Orthodox, and that's fine too in America. We, as far as the American government is concerned, has nothing to do with saying this type is right and this type is wrong. I was shocked when I saw there was a book was talking about creationism versus evolution. So then it said in the book, you can even be religious and believe in evolution because the Catholic Church says that it's okay, whatever it is, and that's fine if you're Catholic. But what if you're a Baptist? And that's what I was talking about before with Jefferson. There was a time, so in certain states, you needed to have, in certain colonies, some colonies had religious freedom and others didn't before the Revolutionary War. And I don't recall exactly which colony it was, but there was someone who was a Baptist preacher, and he was arrested for preaching without a license. Um, and Jefferson, and actually, so then he was in jail preaching from the bars of the jail, and hundreds of people would come to hear his sermons. And Jefferson, who was not, he was like what we would call today, he was spiritual but not religious. He wasn't a person who believed in organized religion. But he certainly held that there was value to religion, to scripture, and so forth, even if he disagreed with certain things. But he said, he said to the Baptists, he said, I disagree with you, but um, I will fight to make sure that you have the right to practice your religion, to say what you want, and that the government should not be bossing around issues of religion. Now, a lot of people are painting this whole issue with Hobby Lobby, that the owners of Hobby Lobby want to deny contraception to their employees. Now, there's nothing that they're doing to prevent them from taking the money that they earn working for them and going and choosing to buy these things. And not only that, but nowadays you can get a lot of things for free. They give it out in clinics and so forth. So I don't understand how can people claim that this is they're imposing their religion on other people. What they're saying, though, is that they don't want to pay for it. And for me, as a Jew, it's almost Passover. So, according to the Jewish faith, I am not allowed to, during Passover, own, eat, sell, buy, whatever, chametz, leavened bread and other items leavened. That's according to my faith. Now, according to my faith, there is nothing wrong with someone who's not Jewish eating leavened bread during Passover. Yet, I, as a Jew, I cannot own these items, and I cannot give them or sell them or do anything or derive any benefit from those items during Passover, which is why we sell it before Passover. Therefore, it's the same thing. And that's the comparison that I want to make, is that basically this forcing Hobby Lobby and these other companies that do not believe in certain aspects of this mandate would be the equivalent to Obama saying that I, as a Jew, have to pay my workers with chametz during Pesach, which would violate my religion. I could, I pay them with money, and they want to go buy bread during Passover. That's fine, and that's up to them, and I have no problem with it. Just I cannot pay them with bread. And that's basically what Obamacare is forcing companies to do, is to pay their employees with something that, according to their sincere religious belief, is forbidden. Doesn't mean that they're preventing their employees from making their own decisions and buying things on their own, but they are not, even with the money that they're getting paid, but they don't want to pay for it themselves. And no one in these United States should ever be forced by the government to violate their religion. I don't understand. This is a sincere religious belief. This is not something that they came up with out of the blue air just to fight against Obamacare. This is something that's very serious, and in no way is Hobby Lobby preventing anybody from access to these things that they themselves don't want to pay for themselves. A similar issue is with the law in Arizona that I don't know why it was turned down. It was vetoed, whatever it was. It's the same thing. Nobody is discriminating against people as they are. No one is saying that they won't bake a birthday cake for someone who engages in homosexuality. They're doing the same. They have the same standard for everybody. You know, if someone, let's say, they were trying to do some kind of thing for inheritance or something, and they're getting married, and they're not necessarily two men getting married, and they're not necessarily practicing this thing. They're just doing it for some other reason that these two men are getting married. The same baker would not say that they're not baking. You know, they also wouldn't bake for their wedding. And similarly, in the other way, if people, they have that proclivity, they claim such a proclivity, or they engage in such actions, but then they decide to get married, a man to a woman, even if even if they don't necessarily they're not doing it for the sake of carnal union, but for whatever reason. So then the same baker would not be discriminating against them just by virtue of the fact that they have some claim of a proclivity, or that they have engaged in some actions, or they plan to engage in other actions outside of this union. The same thing. So they're not discriminating as people. It's not like saying, I'm not going to serve you because you are African American, or because you're a Mormon, or because you're Jewish or Muslim or gay, what they claim. But rather, so if someone was saying they're not going to bake a birthday cake for someone because they're gay, so that would be discrimination, because they would bake a birthday cake for someone else. But if they're saying they're not going to bake a same-sex wedding cake, it's the same thing, because they would treat that person the same. They would not do that whether the person was claiming to be straight, claiming to be gay. Really, nowhere in the Bible is there any such thing as sexual orientation. All there is actions which are prohibited, and that's it. No such thing as a person being one thing or the other in the biblical worldview. In the modern secular worldview, this is what they talk about. But it has no source anywhere, for sure no source in the Hebrew Bible, and no source anywhere in the Talmud, no source in any Jewish literature, and even from what I've studied the Christian Bible, even though I'm not a Christian, there's only one reference to using a noun to define a person by virtue of that action in the Christian Bible. And that also does not indicate in any way what they call now orientation. It only indicates engagement in a particular action. And in Hebrew, you don't even have a word to describe someone who engages in the action. All you have is a description of the action. So therefore, I think also that's something else in the light of recent current events. So we see that this Phelps passed away, and he often said that God hates people, and he would use a derogatory term for people who engage in these actions. There's no such thing in the Bible of such a term as what he used, and there's no such thing to say that God hates people who engage in that. And there's no such thing as a person being that, as far as the Bible is concerned. So he could not have justified what he said from a biblical standpoint, because even though this is not a statement in the Bible, but it's famous. Gandhi said it, and it's paraphrasing a concept that we do find in the Bible. Like say, hate the sin but love the sinner. There's nothing to say that this particular type of person even exists according to the Bible. But that's a separate issue. But the main issue, I think, though, is that freedom of religion means what it means. And to misinterpret someone who is sincerely following the religion, it's as as discrimination has no basis. The fact is that in our religion we have many types of marriages that we're not allowed to officiate at and serve at. So I don't, I can't perform a wedding between a priest, a Jewish priest, and a divorcee and things like that. So these are things that, um, you know, when they start this, it starts a slippery slope that leads to taking away freedom of religion, and this is exactly what the founding fathers of the United States fought and died for and gave so much to avoid. And there's all kinds of nonsense that I hear when I bring up a Jeffersonian approach to freedom of religion. People bring up nonsense like, "Oh, Jefferson owned slaves." Does anyone imagine that if Thomas Jefferson was alive today, he would still own slaves? What kind of stupid thing is that? Next time someone says that, and they're, like, because I bring up about Israel, and they're a Zionist, I'm going to bring up that Rabbi Cook, who was their big Rebbe from the Zionists and all the modern Orthodox people, that he was against women's suffrage. And so why did they make such a big deal out of someone who is apparently a misogynist? It's a crazy thing. By Satmar, in America, all the women vote. There's no such thing as opposing women's suffrage in our community. So it's interesting. Okay, Hatzlacha.